Right, Barry, you said that you decided it was time to leave. Did 85 do it for you, or did you stay on for a bit longer?
No, 85 was it. Woodrow White was the chairman at the time, and should we say it was quite a challenging job to deal with Woodrow White. I just decided it was time to move on, and that's what I did. You know.
So what happened next?
I went to work for a couple of commission agents in them days, which appealed to me at the time. By 88, somebody phoned me up in the business, and he said about this firm that was beginning to become the new kid on the block, City Index. He said they want to go into fixed odds. Would you be interested in going along and having a chat with them and see if they want to take you on? So I said, yeah, fine. And that's exactly what I did. That was in 1988.
Can we go back to the commission agents
Yeah.
first? Because it's like a bit of a dirty word now.
Yeah,
These days,
yeah.
bookmakers are trying not to pay you out if somebody's put it on for you. That
Third
sort
party,
of thing.
whatever they
Yeah,
want to call
so,
it. Yeah.
Tell us about the golden age of commission agents.
Well, I mean, in them days, as I say, it was still quite easy to get on if you sent people around the shops. So quite a few accounts at the time. You could definitely get a few quid on. Yeah, it was an interesting time. Again, dealt with some very lively people in them days.
So would a commission agent be getting on in cash like that, or would they have
Bit of everything, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, a bit of everything, yeah.
And what sort of person would be asking for a commission agent's bet?
Owners, people within the yard, occasionally the trainer. But yeah, some quite lively people. Yeah, it was an interesting time. But I always felt that I wasn't going to be doing that forever. I always wanted to get back into the form side and, you know.
Yeah, because just following marks wouldn't test in your brain.
Not really, yeah.
But the marks must have been worth their weight in gold.
Oh yeah, they were good, but I mean, I've never been one to follow people blindly anyway, because I've always got my own opinion. I mean, if Mr X come on and suddenly wanted £100 each way, a 20 to 1 chance that afternoon, and I knew his worth, should we say, then you'd follow him, yeah. Yeah, you'd follow him. Was
it not tempting just to follow in the really lively marks and not give yourself all that work?
No, not really. I always took each one on its merit. Always took one, you know. But you knew to follow, put it that way. You definitely knew to follow.
And were any of the bookmakers, did you get sort of closed down saying, hang on, we've had enough of this now?
Yeah, oh yeah, quite a few. I also had a couple who used to come on and used to try and say to you, well, you know, ring us first. Ring us first before you ring the others, sort of thing. So in other words, they was basically going with you, you know, following it in. So a lot of that used to go on. But you just got to try and be as discreet as you can and play the game, as they say.
So you went to City Index, which I've always thought was a spread betting firm. Would you still be able to carry on with some of those clients and do a little bit as well? Keep the contacts?
Yeah. I did, when I did leave there a couple of years later, I did keep in contact with a few people. Yeah, for sure. I made some very good contacts there, to be honest. Very good contacts.
So tell us about City Index. So it wasn't a spread betting firm when you were...
Well, they was mainly a spread firm for quite a long time, mainly based on City transactions, but they wanted to get into sport, and they did start to get into sport in quite a big way. And then they decided they wanted to get into fixed odds, and that's where somebody phoned me and said, would you go and do the markets for them? So I said, yeah, fine. But in that 2 years, I mean, it was very, very lively. I think they probably got a bit too big too soon. They wanted to take the world on, should we say, at the time. And I was quite cautious. I used to say every now and then, hang on a minute, you know, I don't think we want to do this. But yeah, I was there for 2 years, and it was a real learning curve. Jonathan Sparke, the boss, who passed away earlier this year, was a very, very clever man, very shrewd. I think they basically say he is the man that started spread betting, you know, buying and selling. Very clever man.
So did the City guys have knowledge of horses? Is that where you came in? They needed people with horse racing knowledge?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I did the fixed odds books for them, and again, just used to chat to the clients, and yeah, it was a really good time. I enjoyed it, but I knew after 2 years that I had this idea in my mind to do my own thing, and that's what I did. And Johnny Sparke, basically, when I said to Johnny Sparke, I want to move on, there's a gap in the market to do something else, he said to me, well, we'll be your first customer. So worked out great. You mentioned that you were sort of doing a bit of business with Harry Findlay. Well, Harry come on board after about a year. He come bowling into the office one day. He'd been out to lunch with Jonathan Sparke. I think he'd gone right through the menu, Johnny come back and said. And I think he ordered lobster as soon as he sat down. And I must admit at the time, I thought to myself, this ain't going to work. He's too much of a character. But after a while, I began to like Harry, I must admit. And I mean, I do occasionally speak to him these days. I haven't spoken to him for a while. And when he went on to do the Scoop 6 with his syndicate, I was a very small cog. They used to ring me up and say, you know, this handicap hurdle, we've got 6 runners. Could you see anything outside this 6 winning? And I used to say, well, this one, it's a 20 to 1 chance, it's definitely not out of it. And, you know, 2 or 3 times they popped up. It was good.
You part of it as well?
Very tiny cog, very tiny cog.
You had a stake in it?
Yeah, very tiny, very tiny.
So when you started about City Index, was there ever any clients that rang up to open an account and you like give them a swerve totally?
Occasionally, but our logic at the time was to let them get on and basically go with them. I mean, I won't name names, but one particular northern-based punter I thought was very good. He used to come on and have, I don't know, 300 quid each way. And I used to sit there, the bet used to come through, and whoever was taking the bet, I used to go like that, I used to go, hang on. So I was on the other phone, putting his £300 on and having the same for the firm. And for me, that works. And you'd never beat him in a million years. So as long as he's winning, you was winning.
And how difficult was it to hedge money that lively?
Wasn't too bad in them days. I'm talking about the late 80s. Wasn't too bad. Yeah, yeah. Might take 2 calls to do it, but used to get on. Yeah.
So you started Beasley Racing Services in '89 after you left City Index. So tell us what you did for what service it was.
Well, I definitely saw a gap in the market. I mean, I know there was 2 or 3 people pricing up races anyway, but I just had this idea that I could maybe, in them days, the early prices probably consisted of 4 or 5 races. I just had this idea of extending the 4 or 5 to maybe 10 or 12, certainly no more than that. You didn't want to price up the maidens, didn't want to price up the 2-year-old races. And then I used to do a news sheet that I used to send out at 11 o'clock each day, which was basically news on every race that day. And nobody was doing that type of thing then. And that worked out really well. A lot of people used to like that.
What sort of news? What, a lot lively money or?
Well, I mean, in the end, unraced 2-year-olds. I would basically say this unraced 2-year-old been back from 9 to 2 to 6 to 4, or working well, you know, that type of thing, you know. It went down well at the time, I must admit, it was very good. There is somebody doing it at the moment, but I started it in 1989.
See, one of the bookies I worked for used to get Neil Wilkins's, you know, careful,
yeah,
all that sort of stuff. So were you in direct competition with him?
No, not at all. Neil was doing the on-course market. Neil used to ring, every time Neil went racing, he used to ring me to check what had gone on. Just, you know, just exchanging views, basically. So, yeah, no, Neil was doing the on-course. I was off course, yeah.
So you guys were, you know, there was no sort of jealousy. You were sort of sharing, help each other out.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, every time he went to Newbury or Newmarket, I'd probably be the first call he made. He'd ring me up and say, you know, what's happened in the 3:30, blah blah blah. And yeah, just help one another out. Yeah, no skin off my nose.
So you were providing the off-course with all that.
Yeah,
so, and bookmakers as well.
Oh no, it was bookmakers. Yeah,
on-course bookmakers. That.
No. I did quite a bit of Chandler's at the time, so obviously that maybe had an input into their on-course book. But no, not really on-course, no.
So what else did the service provide? Or was that the basics of it?
That was the basics of it. I mean, there's a lot of work involved, I must admit. But so price up about 10, 15 races, update the prices as the morning went on. And then this news sheet was very popular. Some people just used to take the news sheet, not the prices. And then when the spread firms become really big in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was working for all the spread firms at the time, because if you worked for one or two, then the third one didn't want to be left out.
Yeah.
So that worked out very well, I must admit. That was quite good at the time.
So you said that you know, you can sort of look at a race and pretty much price it up in 10 minutes. So how often did you price a race up and then start getting your news come through and have to totally reevaluate what you put down in the first place?
Well, I used to send the news sheet out about 8 o'clock in the morning, and obviously the markets were, in them days, was probably starting at 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I was just monitoring the markets the whole time. The whole time. And when the exchanges kicked in the early 2000s, I used to monitor all the moves on the exchanges, so that people used to take that from me as well. So that worked out quite well.
So when you started in '89, how were you getting the information out there to people?
Well, I had quite a few contacts by then, you know, and I was still getting on tissue prices in them days, where a lot of firms started to price up the maidens. So I had about 3 or 4 people, mainly Newmarket, that would ring me up and say, look, can you get me £50 on this unraced 2-year-old is 10 to 1. It's going to be about a 10 to 1 chance. And I used to get them on. So that information came that way.
Yeah, but I mean, how were you getting the information that you provided to your clients? Because there was no text messaging, there was no emails or anything like that. So how did you do it?
Just monitoring the markets the whole time.
Yeah, but how did you get your daily information out to your clients?
Oh, in them days?
Yeah.
Well, fax machine, would you believe? I mean, I remember having this great big thing. It was a fax machine in 1989. Used to send them out by fax. Eventually, that became email.
And when you so you had your contacts, you had your marks. Obviously, their information was worth money to you. Did you sort of have to give them back out?
No, I'd cover their stake for them. They would also ask me what's going on in the race, so I would let them know. A, B, C's fancied, blah blah blah. So it's just a two-way thing, really. You know, it works. It works.
So in those days, is that when you were having your monkeys on, your 250s each way on?
That was in the late 80s, early 90s when I first went on my own. I just had this idea that I should be increasing my stakes. But as I say, I wasn't particularly comfortable with that, so I scaled that down as time went on. But I can remember going to Newmarket one afternoon and having a monkey on an unraced 2-year-old at about 6 to 4, which is not really my style at all. It was a Robert Armstrong horse, Act of Diplomacy, and it got up to win just. But I can remember thinking about a furlong out, I don't enjoy this, so I just stopped that. I've always wanted to back outsiders. That's where I've always scored, backing outsiders. You know.
So we don't want to mention any names, but there were a few well-known punters back in those days that, let's be kind and say they probably weren't going to win over time.
Yeah.
Were you ever tempted to sort of get into one of them and say, can you stick some on for us?
No, never interested in me at all. No.
Or even tell them that you might be able to spin it around for them, and if they became a client.
No. I always wanted to keep low key, to be perfectly honest. Just did my own thing, you know. No, that didn't interest me at all.
So back in those days, you were producing. Is it you still do it now?
No, I haven't done it for quite a while, to be honest. As I say, Betfair really took hold quite a while ago, didn't they, with the overnight exchanges? I do some anti-post prices for a couple of people these days, but daily stuff, I don't do that at all. No, don't miss it at all.
Because the one thing that appeared to finish off the well-informed rails bookmakers was Betfair, because the middleman was no longer needed.
That's right, yeah.
Is that a similar thing that happened to you?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. I've got somebody on the rails who's a good friend of mine. I've worked for him for about 20 years, I suppose. And he rings me up and I price up the races. So he's going to Newbury Friday. I'll price up that race, then races the day before. So I've got my view. And then, say from 7:30 the next morning, I'll just completely monitor the whole markets. I'll watch everything that's moving and not moving, basically. So he will ring me at, say, 11 in the morning. I will give him the prices. I will tell him what's gone for a walk or what's really shortened up. I'll tell him what I've heard, news, blah, 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 and goes from there. So I've done that for over 20 years, so obviously it works, you know. Yeah, Lofty would know roughly that type of thing, yeah.